It was October, the year 2000. Griffin was 2.5, almost 2.5, and he had fallen on his arm, and we took him to the doctor like you would normally do, and the doctor thought he just had dislocated his elbow. We were like, okay, no big deal. But that wasn't the case. It was probably another 6 to 8 weeks of Griffin having random fevers. We'd pick him up and his body would just ache. We'd go to the doctor and the doctor was puzzled. They didn't know what was wrong with him either. We ended up getting referred to Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, and he was set up to get a bone marrow aspiration. So they took a sample of Griffin's bone marrow, and I will never forget when they came in and they told us that there was something in his bone marrow that wasn't supposed to be there. What do you do when you hear something like that? And they said that we had two options. We could either get immediately admitted to the hospital, or we could go home and get some of Griffin's things and come back in the morning. They said we were gonna be admitted to the blood and cancer floor, but they weren't saying he had cancer, but they didn't know what was going on. So we chose to go home so we could pack Griffin's things and we could try to make his first stay at the hospital more enjoyable for him with his own personal stuff. So we get admitted with my 2-year-old to the hospital, and it's, in the evening we were trying to get adjusted to being at the hospital, and we were on the 4th floor, and I see this mom, and she has her son in a red wagon, and she's pulling her son through the hospital. She's got his IV poles with all his medicine, and I stopped her, or she stopped me, I don't remember, and I was like, hey, how's it going, and what's going on, and how do I go to work? And she was like, oh honey, your kid has cancer, you don't work. And I think that was the moment that I just really realized that, the fact that my 2-year-old was diagnosed with cancer wasn't just about my 2-year-old. It was something that our whole family was gonna experience. In addition to finding out that Griffin was sick and that he had cancer, that same week we found out we were expecting our second son. So here we had this week where, oh wow, Griffin, you're gonna have, baby brother. And then now we're fighting for Griffin's life at the hospital. So when Griffin was first diagnosed, we were told that with his type of cancer, he had a 50% 5-year survival rate. That's not a cure rate, that's a survival rate. So with Griffin's initial diagnosis, he was set up to have 4 rounds of high-dose chemotherapy. The chemo that he was gonna be receiving was something that we had to do as an inpatient in the hospital. So he would be in the hospital for 5 to 7 days, and then we'd get to come home for what we hoped would be 2 or 3 weeks, and then start our next round of chemo. So he had 4 rounds initially, and then a big surgery to remove his remaining tumor. And then he was supposed to have another 2 rounds of chemotherapy and a bone marrow transplant. And then radiation. He had 2 weeks of radiation, and then we'd start any clinical trial that we could to try to help his chances and have him beat his cancer. So Griffin, initially, Griffin surpassed all the doctors' expectations of how he was gonna do with his treatments and his cancer. And he was cancer-free for about 1.5 years. So his initial treatment was like 1.5 years, and then he started having headaches. And they couldn't explain the headaches at first, and come to find out that his cancer relapsed and he had a brain tumor. Once Griffin had his brain tumor, we were eligible for all different kinds of clinical trials. We traveled from Los Angeles up to San Francisco and did clinical trials up there. We did all kinds of new types of medicine, and he was responding really well. And we were really hopeful that he was going to beat his cancer. And unfortunately, his cancer came back again. At that time, we knew we were just on borrowed time. And we actually relocated to Texas from Los Angeles. And we changed our ways and did what we could do to make him comfortable, so that he could really try to enjoy his life as a kindergartner. So he, was diagnosed at 2. Now he's in kindergarten. So we were really fortunate with Griffin. He had this ability to just kind of grasp what was going on and make the most out of his situation. And he was a very opinionated, rambunctious, fun-loving 2-year-old. And, how do you tell your 2-year-old that they have cancer? We weren't really sure. So we told Griffin that he had bad guys that were in his body, that he was gonna get medicine at the hospital, and the medicine was gonna help kill the bad guys. So Griffin, all of a sudden, decided that he needed to do whatever he could to fight the bad guys and to kill the bad guys. And he would dress up like superheroes and run through the halls of the hospital. And he loved going to the playroom. The playroom was like the best thing in the whole entire world. And every couple days they'd have a new arts and craft project for him, or something to kind of get his mind off of the fact that he was in the hospital. He didn't really mind being in the hospital. He threw up a lot. I threw up a lot because I was pregnant. But he actually, became friends with a lot of kids there, and it became a family. And we were friends with the nurses and the doctors, and it was incredible. So the 3 things that I would tell somebody if they were just diagnosed with cancer are: 1, enjoy the little things. Some days are gonna be harder than others, but try to find those things that, you can find joy with. I know we did that with Griffin a lot. It wasn't always about this big, you had to go to Disneyland, but you were able to, find something good that happened in that day and just, make the most of your situation that you're in. Another thing that I would say is that it's not just you that is diagnosed with cancer and that is being affected. It's your entire family. It's the other siblings that are there. It's the parents. It's hard on everybody. And then the other thing that I would say is that allow yourself to feel. It's okay to be mad, and it's okay to be sad. And it's okay to have days that you're happy too, because cancer is forever. Whether you find a cure and you're cancer-free, or whether you're worried that you're gonna relapse and it's gonna come back, or whether you lose the person who was fighting, cancer changes your life. I think that you could never be prepared to try to tell anybody that there's no more treatments that they can do, or that the doctors have run out of options. And on December 27th, 2004, I had to tell my 6-year-old that his cancer was too bad and there was nothing else that they could do. And I didn't know how to tell him. How do you tell somebody that they're probably gonna die? You don't wanna have them lose hope, but it's really hard when there's no hope left to be had. So I told Griffin that unfortunately there was nothing else that the doctors could do, and that his cancer had just taken over, and that there was no more fighting that he needed to do, and that we didn't know when, but he was probably gonna die. And he was so brave. And he told me not to cry, which obviously I didn't do a very good job of not crying. But, and he said, Mom, he's like, it's okay. He's like, actually, first, before he said it was okay, he asked me, was there another hospital we could go to? Was there different doctors that we could see? Was there other medicine that he could take? And unfortunately, I had to tell him no. And that broke my heart, because as a parent, all you want to do is help your kid. So Griffin took that in, and a few minutes later, he said, Mom, he's like, it's okay. He said, but promise me to tell people about a boy named Griffin, who is brave and strong, and who did everything he could to fight his bad guys. And so, I'm here today to tell everybody about a boy named Griffin.
Is beating cancer in your blood? Click the link below to donate now.